Hello everybody. This week's video is going to be a reading of an essay that I wrote for my environmental ethics class. And why am I reading it? Well, I think it's important that in life we challenge ourselves mentally. And in philosophy, the cross-examination, the self-debate is very, very, very important. And I think it's a skill that more people should examine. And so when I wrote this essay, I wrote it with the intent of writing a paper on something that I personally don't agree with, but that I wanted to give a really sound argument for and be able to defend really, really well. So I wrote this essay, and I ended up actually convincing myself that I liked this view, but I'm still not convinced that this is the right view. I like it, I like this view, but I don't know if it's the 100% right view. So what I decided to write about was if ecosystems have moral status. So here we go. It's no secret right now that we're in an environmental crisis. The climate is changing. Ecosystems around the world are being affected. And this brings up a very important question of whether or not we ought to intervene in this crisis. This question brings us to ask ourselves, what is the moral status of the environment, ecosystems, and the species within that ecosystem? Lawrence Johnson says that ecosystems have moral status due to the fact that he believes ecosystems are pursuing goals, to which I disagree with to a certain extent because of a few points that Henry Cahan brings up on how organisms actually pursue goals. So in this essay, I will explain both Johnson and Cahan's arguments, and through them, I will develop my own reasons for not giving ecosystems moral status, like Johnson wants, while also giving them moral consideration, which is what Cahan doesn't think we should do either. So I'm going to rebuttal those reasons, and then I'm going to respond to the rebuttals to further show my point, and then I'm going to offer my view at the end on how we ought to live in harmony with these ecosystems. And in the video, I'll upload some pictures that AI generated for what I think would be a pretty cool way to live in harmony with the environment down here in South Florida. So Johnson argues that ecosystems have moral significance because they have goals that they're working towards to achieve through the biotic/living factors and abiotic/non-living factors within them. The active balance/homeostasis that each ecosystem maintains through balancing populations, abiotic factors, and other environmental factors such as weather, etc., is proof that Johnson that show that these ecosystems have goals. Page 269 of my environmental ethics textbook. He argues that we ought to respect these goals that they are working towards, and if we are to ignore these goals, interfering with the natural homeostatic process of the ecosystem, that most likely the ecosystem will be worse off than if we just left it alone. So Johnson provides an example of how putting out forest fires in the Sierra Nevadas can lead to the overgrowth of juniper weeds. They take up valuable resources from other plants and animals, also page 269. Johnson mentions that these weeds are necessary to bring back life to the area after like a total wipeout, like a total forest fire wipeout. However, the intervention of these forest fires, the natural course of these forest fires, throws the ecosystem out of homeostasis and stresses the ecosystem. And this is pages 269 through 271. I'm not disagreeing that ecosystems have goals, like they are working towards something, and I also don't disagree that they maintain a form of homeostasis. My disagreement actually comes from the fact that these goals give entire ecosystems moral standing, to which I'm going to draw my response from Henry Cahan's work. So Cahan, on the other hand, he does not agree that we should give moral status to ecosystems. As a matter of fact, he disagrees with the fact that we should even give them moral standing, or moral consideration. Excuse me. Kahan draws this conclusion from the fact that ecosystems cannot have goals due to the fact they do not have the means, genetic and physical means, to pursue them. It's 286 on my textbook. And therefore, they can't even have moral consideration. So they don't have a body. Ecosystems don't have a body. Like, yes, there is an ecosystem, but it's not like a human that has a body to pursue goals. Or DNA with the inherent need to survive written in us. Kahan mentions that we should have a preservationalist institution. Wow, what a tongue twister. As his solution why we ought to care about ecosystems, meaning that we ought to protect the environment, but not on the grounds of morality, just that it's intuitive. 286. According to Kahan, the Darwinian theory of evolution is in favor of individual populations of animals, plants, etc., of having goals within themselves. 283. The ecosystems which organisms function in balances out these goals of all the organisms within it, allowing for each individual to pursue their own behavioral goals to the fullest capacity of the environment they exist in. What the ecosystem is not doing, however, is thinking about these goals and choosing them. Goals exist on the individual level based on instinct and behavior, 285, and the conflicting goals of living organisms added to the non-living environmental factors / abiotic factors creates a natural balance. Ecosystems do not have survival goals and or instincts like living beings do, and they don't have evolutionary goals to survive. Page 285. So you might ask me, well, isn't the act of balancing the goals of individuals a goal within itself, and interfering with their goal would be morally wrong, violating autonomy? And the very fact that there is an autonomy to violate means that they have moral status, to which I say, not entirely. Ecosystems are not acting off of behavioral instinct. When an animal or human acts, it's out of some instinct, freeze, fight, flight, or in the case of humans, instinct and deliberate thought. Ecosystems don't do this. When left alone by humanity, ecosystems simply balance the goals of individual populations. In allowing everything to thrive as much as it possibly can within said ecosystem. The reason this is important is because nature does not sit around and debate morality. Animals, plants, ecosystems don't sit around thinking about whether or not their actions are right or wrong. Humans are the only creatures that debate morality, to our knowledge, to our current knowledge. I want to stress that, to our current knowledge. And in order to maintain homeostasis with Earth, we ought to give moral consideration to the ecosystems and animals that exist alongside us. However, they're not part of the moral community that's talking about morality, so they can't have moral status. Another response to that paragraph could be, well, Anthony, not everyone on Earth is a part of the philosophical community debating morality. If we go by the standard you set in the last paragraph, you're saying that people who are not philosophers do not have moral status as well. And my response to that is that everyone, excluding extreme cases of mental and physical disorders, either debates morality on some level or has the capacity to debate morality on some level. Once again, I return to the fact that humans, to our current understanding, are the only species on Earth that debate morality. You can come back to me again saying, what about the goals of said ecosystems in the biosphere, Earth? For those of you who don't know what biosphere is. Are the ecosystems not acting like how animals act within their own ecosystem? Basically what that's saying is, are the ecosystems on Earth balancing out the biosphere like individual animals balance out the ecosystem? To this, I ask you to go back to the last paragraph. Organisms perform goals within their own ecosystem. They balance out their populations, and said ecosystems balance the biosphere. You remove human influence from the equation and look at history. It shows that it takes a cosmic level event, asteroid, climate-altering volcanic eruptions, things like that, to cause an imbalance within the biosphere. This relates to my point in the last paragraph. Again, if anything, this goes a step further than Kahan does. Because even animals are pursuing balance based off instinct, not making moral decisions of whether or not they should do something. A lion does not debate whether it's right or wrong to kill the gazelle. Whatever animals lions eat. I state again that animals, plants, ecosystems, and worlds do not, to our current understanding, do not debate morality. Only humans debate morality. So when considering whether or not to perform an action that will affect our world, we owe these systems moral consideration due to our direct relationship with our world for survival. Based on this statement, I will include the fact that animals do not have moral status. But like ecosystems, we owe them moral consideration. So, like, animal cruelty is wrong. We should not be cruel to animals. But animals are not, like, part of our moral community. Like, we owe them the moral consideration of not harming them. Like, that is absolutely true. We ought to consider our actions when it relates to animals. Is it right for me to kick the dog? Well, the dog's going to suffer. Like, I should consider the dog. But the dog is not debating morality with me. But it's morally wrong to kick the dog. So, sounds like a bad point. Like, I don't care about animals, or I'm speciesist, which is just not true. Like I was saying, animals feel pain. We also depend on them to, we depend on a functional environment for our own survival, which animals participate in. Humanity owes plants, animals, ecosystems that cannot make moral decisions moral consideration. We should not just walk all over them, destroying the environment. By this, I mean we need to examine how to live in balance within ecosystems in the biosphere, while also allowing humanity to prosper. If we're to ignore the environment and walk all over it, humanity would not survive. We'd run out of food, water, cause natural disasters, like we're already doing, by the way, etc. And this is all well and good, but how do we actually live in balance with nature? Is it even possible to live in balance with nature? Well, it would take a shit ton of change. I mean, a ton of change. And it would 100% be difficult to pull off. However, if we're going to take a step back and look at it from a normative perspective, it's totally possible. Yet again, extremely difficult. And will require a change of how we structure our towns, cities, and society. So here in South Florida, an example for living in harmony would not to be pave over the Everglades, not to be building massive highways and systems, but to, live like the Seminoles did. But, put our houses up on stilts as to not affect the environment underneath us. Not pave over, but have like a swampy Venice that we would live in. So, with today's technology, advancements in medicine, construction, it's absolutely possible to live this way. However, it would take a massive change, and without a doubt, take a lot of getting used to. From my point of view, though, that sacrifice is totally worth it. And we ought to look at ways that we can integrate nature and ecosystems into our towns, cities, and lives today. So to wrap it up, we owe ecosystems and animals moral consideration, even though they cannot have moral status because of their inability to directly pursue goals and participate in moral discussion. We owe them this moral consideration due to our direct dependence on the health of the planet in order to continue surviving on it. And without this, humanity would wither away and our beautiful world would never be the same. And because of this, we cannot leave the health of our planet up to preservationalist intuition like Cahan says. And we must directly rope the health of these individuals and systems into our own moral discussions. And if you want my sources, you can go to Environmental Ethics, Readings in Theory and Application. That's the textbook that we got these from. So yeah, we should absolutely be environmentalists and consider the environment when acting, when thinking about what we're doing in this world. But ecosystems, they're not participating in these discussions. They're not their own moral entity to our knowledge. So to give them moral status just doesn't make sense. But we owe them moral consideration. Thank you.